Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to welcome you all here today to our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee meeting. It is our hope that this is the last virtual committee meeting of this committee and that we can all be together in the very near future. Today's meeting is a little different because we are doing it through our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, but we did invite all the members of the New York Building Congress and Commissioner Gutman. We have a very large turnout for you today, I'm excited to say. I am here just to say thank you really to all of you for continuing to support the Building Congress, to continue to work hard in this industry. It is, I've said this a million times, especially over the last year, the building industry is the driving force of getting New Yorkers back and moving, whether it's, continuing to build schools, continuing to build our transportation networks, our open space networks, and really everything that goes with it. So it's really an honor to welcome you. It's great to see two of our co-chairs, Michael Sweeney at HNTB and Michael Vigiano at Skanska. You'll be hearing from them shortly. And before I turn over to Mike Sweeney, let me just say that I am ecstatic, thrilled. I mean, I could add more adjectives that right now I can't seem to think of, but when I heard that Hank Gutman was going to be appointed the new DOT commissioner, I really, really could not have thought of a better individual. I've known Hank from a lot of Brooklyn projects, from Brooklyn Bridge Park to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we spent most of 2019, excuse me, every Thursday together working on the BQE panel and the work that is needed on not just the triple cantilever, but the entire BQE project. So I was thrilled to see Hank take this on. And, there are people that say, well, he's only got less than a year. What can he do? And I will only say, if you know Hank Gutman, you know that what this man can do in about 10 months, most people cannot do in 10 years. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So with that, Hank, we're thrilled to have you. Mike Sweeney, you're up for the official intro.
Thank you, Carlo. Good morning, everyone. I think we are all definitely sick of our virtual meetings, but we're going to have one more good one here today, and hopefully our next one will be in person. It's funny, I just reflect on what Carlo just said. I grew up in Brooklyn. When I was a kid, I would meet people and they'd say, oh, you're from Brooklyn. I know so-and-so. Do you know them? And I said, I don't. Brooklyn's a really big place. There's millions of people there. But if there's one person that might know everyone in Brooklyn, it could be Carlo. Anyway, so Hank, I have to read Hank's bio because this is very impressive and no one could actually memorize all of this. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Hank. So Hank was appointed the New York City Transportation Commissioner by Mayor Bill de Blasio on February 3rd. Commissioner Gutman is a retired partner of Simpson, Thatcher, and Bartlett, where he headed the Intellectual Property Practice Group from 1996 until his recent retirement. So during that 40-year legal career, Commissioner Gutman litigated a wide range of high-profile cases. A 45-year Brooklyn resident, he's chair of the Brooklyn Navy Yard, New York City's largest industrial park, and providing thousands of quality manufacturing jobs to some very deserving people. He's also serving on the board of the Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is a world-class park for many of you that have seen it, on what was formerly an abandoned waterfront. Also a trustee of the Brooklyn Public Library, where he co-chairs the Digital Innovation Council and a member of the board of St. Anne's Warehouse. He previously served as the vice chair of the New York City League of Conservation Voters and as a board member of the National Center for Law and Economic Justice. And if you aren't impressed enough, he's also a graduate of University of Pennsylvania and Harvard Law School. So that are some very impressive credentials. So with that, we want to welcome the commissioner and thank him for joining us today. Commissioner?
Yes, thanks. I found the unmute button. And I too look forward to seeing all of you in real life, hopefully sometime soon. So Mike, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I mean, the one thing missing from your list is that I've obviously flunked retirement. That's how I happen. That's what all my friends have told me, and I plead guilty, but I'm not displeased by that. So it's a treat to be with all of you today, and I want to say a word. You guys all know how lucky you are to have Carlo, but I'm going to remind you a bit of why. I mean, I've known, as Carlo said, I've known him since he was working for Marty Markowitz, and we worked together on Brooklyn Bridge Park. He is a very productive and thoughtful member of our Navy Yard board to this day. And we did spend one afternoon a week for almost a year in your offices, enjoying your fine lunches, I might say, and the great support of your staff and your team in the office, trying to figure out what to do about the BQE. And, you know, if ever there was going to be an intensive education in some of the real challenges facing our transportation department and our infrastructure in general, that was the crash course. And I confess that as we sat there with the DOT team and their consultants, et cetera, going through all of this during that year, I never quite imagined that a year later I would be sitting in this position and actually have the ability to do something about it. But as we'll discuss later, that is certainly one of our many agenda items. And I guess the last thing is, as to the 11 months when I was appointed, 10 months now of this tenure, we've got a lot to do, but we also have a deadline. And there's nothing like, as any lawyers in the group will know, there's nothing like a deadline to get stuff done. I mean, that's the key. And Mayor Bloomberg used to have those countdown clocks on the wall at City Hall as his term was coming to an end. I think I can share with you the deep, dark secret that Mayor de Blasio has had them implanted in our brains. So we've got our track shoes on. We've got a lot to get done. And I look forward to working with all of you. I look forward to meeting you in real life someday soon. And I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. So I'm going to jump right in with our first question, Commissioner. You know, we were all excited, I think, last week when the mayor announced $17 billion in capital projects that he was giving the go-ahead and releasing through OMB and other agencies. You know, one of the things that we've been talking about, it's hard to believe it's been a year, but for almost a year, we've been saying that having the capital process and capital budget process continue, regardless of operational budget issues, is critical for the future of New York. And it's not just the actual construction, but it's the design, the engineering, and everything that goes with that. So we were very excited to hear that. Give us a sense of what DOT is working on or acting on out of that 17 billion.
Yeah, absolutely, Carlo. And I'm glad you asked this question. We too we're incredibly excited. And you know, there was an initial restart, and then last year there was the additional restart, and we're quite excited about that for exactly the reason you said, because you know, it's not just the construction itself, but as everybody on this call knows, there's a long run up in terms of the planning and the approval and all of that. And all of that stuff had been frozen. So let me give you a breakdown. We've got, counting the two restarts together, we've got $742 million that we're now proceeding on, worth of projects, that is 368 projects in all. And again, we're hoping that this is a process that will continue. 150 million is for bridges, 41 projects. 350 million is street reconstruction, 215 projects. 61 million is for traffic operations, 24 projects. Ferries are getting 35 million. Sidewalks and pedestrian ramps, 116 million, 28 projects. Facilities, 4 million, 14 projects. Fleet, 14 million, 12 projects. And ITT is just a paltry 8 million and 10 projects. But there's some big stuff in there. And there's some priority projects. Obviously, we're focusing on major infrastructure that's in need of help. And yeah, we're thrilled. We're thrilled to be back in business on that stuff.
Our members are all excited about that.
Good.
Commissioner, you just described a lot of, kind of state of good repair type projects, but you touched on in your remarks the work that you did on the triple cantilever and the BQE, and obviously that's a monumental challenge. What do you see happening? How do we deal with that?
Well, we are, as you can imagine, this is one of our focuses, and one of my focuses personally, one of the agency's focuses, one of City Hall's focuses, and we are finalizing the set of recommendations for City Hall, which I hope we'll have something to announce in the not too distant future. But as you can imagine, the basic approach we're using is consistent with the findings of the committee. The near term is going to focus on safety. We have to make sure that that structure remains safe. It's old. It hasn't been cared for as well as one might have hoped over the years, and it's showing its age. So we need to make sure that it's safe for whatever use is there. We would like to reduce the load on that structure in the meantime, since that will buy us time to address the issues. So that's obviously one of the things that we're focusing on. And again, some of the things that the committee talked about now are going to happen. I mean, or have happened. The fixing of the tolls on Staten Island. I mean, that was one of the things that one of the earliest things that our committee said, this is obvious. This is a no-brainer. We shouldn't have economic incentives for large trucks or passenger cars for that matter, to drive through this stretch to avoid a toll. That makes no sense. And our congressional delegation promptly got that done. Congestion pricing, we are now very optimistic, is coming in the not too distant future. That too will adjust the toll structure so that the economic incentives align with what we would like the traffic patterns to be, including everything from reducing congestion in Manhattan generally to, again, giving people less incentive to drive past existing alternatives to get to the Brooklyn Bridge. So we've got all that stuff. And then we are looking at engineering, at repair solutions, engineering solutions. And then the other piece, which is the bigger long-term piece, is arriving at a structure and putting in place a process to review the entire corridor, because one of the decisions that our committee, one of the realizations that we reached fairly early on, and it just became stronger as we went, is that this particular stretch may be getting all the attention, but you've got problems all up and down the corridor. And if you talk to the people who live there, you've got issues from Staten Island to, the outer reaches of Queens. And equity, which obviously is a major focus for the administration, requires that we, and basic common sense and fairness all require that we address all of those issues and not just focus on one piece. So again, we'll have something more concrete, I hope, to announce in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, directionally, I think that gives you an idea of where we're going.
Good. Look forward to it.
Thanks. And we're going to want, your thoughts, your input.
Sure.
morning.
All good ideas are welcome. Sorry.
No. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Mike.
So we have new leadership in Washington that is familiar with the needs of New York City, with Senate Majority Leader Schumer and Deputy Secretary Trottenberg. How does this help with the transportation needs of the city and beyond?
Look, this is a huge help, and I would add to the mix I would add to the mix the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and I would add our entire congressional delegation. You know, it's not just the majority leader. We've got strong leaders from our area in the congressional delegation who have real influence with the speaker and on the agenda. And in addition to my predecessor, you know, the legendary Polly Trottenberg, there are other New Yorkers who are now in senior positions at the Department of Transportation in Washington. And the secretary himself, as a former mayor, has a better appreciation for these issues than other people might, because as a mayor, he dealt with the same things, you know, in his city, albeit on a smaller scale. So long-winded way of saying we are quite optimistic about, you know, both the stimulus package, what we hope is to come on infrastructure, on a new attitude of cooperation and wanting to help, which we're already seeing evidence of out of Washington. I mean, all of this is a breath of fresh air because, as everybody on this call knows, we've got huge infrastructure issues that need to be addressed, some of which, you know, could have or should have been addressed long ago. And I mean, it's one of the reasons I took this job, frankly, because it seemed to me that this was a very exciting time to be in this particular line of work, because everything's aligned. You've got the last year and the desire to get things done before the administration leaves office. You've got a change in Washington. I mean, all of this makes me optimistic, at least, that we can get a lot done this year and beyond.
Just a follow-up to that, Commissioner. So we're expecting an infrastructure bill. There's been discussion about earmarks coming back. So if you were putting your 2 cents in here, and what's a great outcome for New York City DOT with respect to this upcoming bill? What's on your wish list for things to happen?
How long do you have?
As long as you want.
So I mean, one reason I'm pausing for a moment is there is a city wish list, and there's, you know, and a near and regional wish list, and then there's the DOT wish list. And you know, as New Yorkers, obviously we care greatly about the Gateway. I mean, that's not a DOT project, but it's critically important. And support for the MTA. Again, I mean, part of our mission is to encourage people to use mass transit or bikes or, you know, e-scooters, et cetera. I mean, to use things that are alternatives to the car. The MTA isn't us, but supporting the MTA obviously makes that mission much easier. Beyond that, I think it's some of the infrastructure, some of the highways. I mean, we've talked about the BQE. Obviously, it would be great to have a significant infusion of federal money to help make that happen. There are other aging bridges and bits of highway around the city that, you know, we've got a list, borough by borough, of places we would like to spend that money. And then beyond that, I mean, those are the big infrastructure projects. Beyond that, we're in the process of trying to transform the streets. We're trying to, you know, when I was introduced at that press conference, I accidentally referred to it as the Department of Transformation. The mayor picked up on that and said it was a Freudian slip, which it probably was, but having spent a month there, it is, or it should be. And so we are reimagining how we use our streets. We are, you know, trying to be responsive to the needs of various communities, the Open Streets program, open restaurants. I mean, New York's restaurants are a treasure. Why shouldn't we have, I mean, we did some of it in response to the pandemic to help them survive, but people liked it. The restaurateurs like it. You know, why shouldn't we be Paris or Rome or any of the world's great cities where outdoor dining is a permanent feature of life? And, you know, we're doing we're doing busways, we're doing bikeways. I mean, we're doing all of those projects could benefit. And then one I haven't mentioned yet, which is sort of the override on all of them, is Vision Zero. I mean, this was an initiative under Commissioner Trottenberg. Tremendous success model for other cities. But we continue to face challenges. As I say, when people ask, zero means zero, right? We aren't there yet. The numbers are moving in the right direction. There's a great improvement since 2013. But during the pandemic, you know, we, as everybody else in the country, saw a big increase in reckless driving, speeding, and the resulting crashes, collisions. They aren't accidents, they're crashes and collisions. And, you know, so we have more to do, and things like installing more speed cameras and having them run longer hours and things like that are ways we can do it. So all of this requires money. And, you know, so obviously some hard decisions will be made among and between the various agencies, all of whom have very good claims on some of that money. But we've got a long list, and it's better to have the money and be discussing how you're going to divvy it up than not having the money. So this is sort of a nice problem to have, right? If we end up having to make hard decisions between different agencies and different jurisdictions as to who gets what.
So with this most recent stimulus bill, there's going to be intense competition for the discretionary transit dollars from the transit agencies from all around the country. And if you think about New York, right away you think about the MTA. Where does New York City DOT fit in that pecking order, and how do you think you'll fare in getting some of those dollars for your program?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've been focusing on, and I don't think this is unique to me, I'm sure all commissioners in my position did, is working on having a really good, positive working relationship with those sister agencies. You know, yeah, when it comes to dollars and various other things, there is a competition, but we're all trying to achieve the same thing, right? I mean, take congestion pricing, huge initiative, critically important to what the DOT is doing. The lead agency responsible for getting it through is the MTA, right? So we're working closely with them and we're partnering with them. All the things we're doing with buses to make them safer, to make them more efficient, faster, to make sure that we're providing, that they are the best possible alternative to private cars, right? You know, we can do that. We can do things on the streets. We can do things with traffic signals. We can do all sorts of design stuff. But the MTA operates the bus system. So the areas of overlap are huge. So yeah, I mean, I again, as I said, I think there will be some issues about prioritization of projects. And my assumption is that ultimately the mayor and the governor are going to make those decisions, not us, or the federal government. But my plan is to do everything in my power to be a good partner and to have good, close working collaboration with all of those entities. You know, MTA, New York State DOT, Port Authority. You know, and some of the folks running those agencies are people I've known for a long time and worked for or with in different contexts. So at least 1 month in, I'm optimistic that we're going to make all of that work.
So you mentioned congestion pricing a couple of times, Commissioner, and I agree that's a critical component of funding the MTA capital plan and having the funds to make things happen. But when this is implemented, how do you see this affecting New York City streets and New Yorkers in general?
Well, I think it's going to, again, it's been interesting. And again, this grew out of the BQE work that we did. 30%, if I'm remembering correctly, and maybe Carla will correct me if I didn't, 30% of the cars each morning that are running over that stretch, the cantilever, are heading to the Brooklyn Bridge or the Manhattan Bridge, having driven past the Cary Tunnel. I was going to say Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, the Cary Tunnel, to get there. Why? I mean, why would you drive? I mean, some of them are heading to Lower Manhattan. Why would they? Many of them probably. Why would you drive out of your way to do that? And the answer is tolls.
And it is about 30% just on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Right, there you go, 30% on the Brooklyn Bridge.
It's crazy.
That's a lot of, so if congestion pricing reduces or eliminates that distinction, you know, you've already reduced traffic on this piece of infrastructure that needs help. You've reduced traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge, where, by the way, we plan to take one of those lanes, one of those inbound lanes, and give it to bicycles. You know, that's already been announced. We're hard at work on that. Allowing the pedestrians to have exclusive use of the boardwalk on top, which is both good for pedestrians and good for cyclists, and, you know, safer for everybody. So, you know, that's one immediate one. And I'm sure there are a lot of other distortions in the economics of this caused by, you know, that congestion pricing can help address. The other idea, and obviously one of the main driving forces, is just to reduce traffic congestion in Manhattan itself, which remains an issue. And, you know, if it's more expensive to drive below 60th Street in Manhattan, hopefully that drives people toward buses, subways, ferries, you know, all the different alternatives. So, or bicycles, I'm sorry. I mean, obviously there's been huge growth in that. So for all those reasons, we think it's a very positive development. And then on top of all that, it helps fund the MTA, which desperately needs the money. So it's a win-win-win-win-win any way you slice it.
I wanna stay on bikes for a minute.
Sure.
One of the things I think you mentioned in your announcement, or the day it was announced that you were named commissioner, is the 10,000 new bike racks by 2022. Give us a sense on what that looks like, and, you know, our communities that are looking for that going to get it, that may have been left out in the past.
Absolutely. So, well, I'm pleased to report that as of the end of last week, we'd done our first 300. We had a little event in the Bronx in an underserved community where Chair Rodriguez of the Transportation Committee of the Council joined me as we put in 6 and announced the first 300 done. But we've got a very aggressive schedule for putting them in all around the city. Carlo, as you suggest, equity is obviously a driver. I mean, if you look at what we're doing with the e-scooter pilot in the Bronx, with expanding City Bike in various communities that aren't served. I mean, the whole idea of all of these efforts is to address the underserved communities that were left behind in the early stages of all of these programs. We're trying to address that now. And so in terms of where we place them, that's it. The other thing is we're looking for input. We announced that day, and I'm not sure if I have the website handy, but the URL handy, but I'm happy to share it with Carlo, and you can share it with your members. I mean, we invited the public. Tell us where you want them, right? I mean, if we put them in places where nobody wants them or nobody's going to use them, that's probably not the most productive exercise. So there's some we know, right? Like near transit hubs, near where people are going to ride a bike, lock it up, take a subway or something to get to work, and then come back and get the bike. But, you know, and near hospitals and other facilities like that. But we've invited the public to tell us where. We've invited the council members, tell us where in your district you'd like it. And we're geared up and ready to go. And again, this is one of those numerical targets we set that we are determined to meet before the year's up. Again, it's only half of them this year. The other half is next year. So we'll leave something for the next administration to do.
Mike Vigiano, I know you have a question on potholes and street repair.
Yes, unfortunately, this comes with the territory of being the commissioner. So we've had a pretty bad winter, right? Probably
Right.
one of the worst winters than in the last five years.
Yep.
And I am somebody who has actually had the tire on a pothole right at LaGuardia Airport. So, and now I actually drove back over the same route the next day, and the potholes are filled, right? But the road's a mess. So, I mean, what is the plan, or how do you even attack something like that to get out there and start repairing our roadways?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a major challenge, as you can imagine. It was a major challenge to begin with. The fact that some of the roads are old doesn't help, and the hard winter also doesn't help. And in terms of street reconstruction, 350 million, that was the largest single item when I talked about the things that are now restarted. So this is a major challenge. I mean, we have a crack team that deals with this stuff, and we work hard on being responsive. I mean, everybody in the agency, if they see an issue, is supposed to phone it in. So we try and stay on top of it. And as I said, the people doing this are very good. And I mean, we've already had meetings. We're geared up for a tough spring based on a tough winter. So, so we're putting the money, we're trying to put the money at it. We are trying to, we've got a good team of people who are doing it. I understood when I took this job that this was one thing that everybody I knew would have something to say to me about at some point, and I'm prepared for that. You know, and I too have had your experience, Mike, with a pothole, and recently leased a new car, a hybrid plug-in with all the bells and whistles to warn me if there's a cyclist in a blind spot, et cetera, because I'm trying to be safe when I do drive. And of all the extras the dealer wanted to offer, all the add-ins, you know, that they come up with at the end, the one I took was the pothole protection. So,
Smart man.
I mean, so I hear you, I feel your pain. And, you know, again, if anybody in the call, I don't mean to be flip about it, because I realize it's a serious issue, and it's something that affects all of us. If anybody on the call has suggestions of things we could do better or differently, you know, Carlo's got hgutman@dot.nyc.gov is my email. Carlo, you know, Carlo has my personal email and stuff. Just if you have ideas for things we could improve, we're in the business of listening. So by all means, pass them along. But I hear you, Mike. It is a challenge, and it's a challenge every year. And this year with the weather was worse. I mean, snow removal was a big challenge this year. I mean, the sanitation department was hard pressed, and snow removal in bike lanes, you know, which requires different equipment than the normal trucks, was a huge problem this year. And that was one I heard about from the moment I was appointed. I was appointed in the middle of a blizzard. Before I got home from the press event, I already had angry emails about snow removal and bike lanes. So
Maybe you have to second guess that appointment then, right, Commissioner?
Exactly.
no comment.
I want to jump to a couple of members' questions.
Sure.
Because we only have about 15-ish minutes left. So I'm just going to throw a few of these out there. By the way, Hank, everybody loves a paved street. We know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pave all of New York City. It'll be good.
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the questions is DOT put out an RFP almost 2 years ago for investigation and design for major bridge work, which is the first step in bridge rehabilitation and replacement. I think the question is, what can we do to accelerate the process? And maybe it's the release of the money you mentioned earlier that's part of this on bridge work.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, if you want to send me the details, I can make a more specific inquiry. But my understanding is that when things were stopped before now being restarted, they were sort of frozen in place. And, you know, if you were approved and ready to put shovels in the ground, you didn't put the shovels in the ground. If you were, you know, at the RFP stage, things just stopped. So again, I'd be happy to try and figure out whether this was something that was the subject of the restart, or if there's some other issue, and I'd have an appropriate person from bridges or procurement or whatever get back to you.
One of the other questions, and we've been asked this not just today, but many times, is as you're restarting this, you mentioned all those different pots of money. Is it just for construction, or does that include also design and planning stages of projects?
I mean, the honest answer is I don't know at this point. I mean, part of that's going to be in the details. I'm not sure whether the answer to that question is buried somewhere in the 600 pages or whatever, or whether that turns on further regulatory decisions by the DOT, the federal DOT, or not. So I'm not sure what the scope is. And again, you know, this is the stimulus. We're hoping the infrastructure is still to come. So hopefully it should include all of the above. I mean, it's hard to do the construction if you can't do the plan.
Right. Good. One of the questions we've actually gotten a couple of questions on design build.
Yep.
And give us your sense in the coming year, projects with design build, and what you think can be happening with that.
Look, I think design build is a wonderful tool to have because it simplifies the process and speeds things up, and it just makes sense as an economic matter. So I'm pleased we have it, and I don't have handy a list of specific projects on which I think it will be applied, but you know, I know that we have some where that's part of the plan. I guess what we learned in the BQE committee was that sometimes it may not work as well as you like if it's a project where it's viewed by the people who would do the work as being risky, because as I understand it, it shifts the risk from the government toward the contracting party. And so in the right project, I think it's a great tool, and we intend to use it.
I know you know, one of the things that people don't know your background well is that you've been very focused and clear on navigating very, very complex situations. And Brooklyn Bridge Park really is a perfect example of something that you would have thought there should be no opposition, because we're opening up, you know, almost 100 acres of green space and waterfront access and everything. And yet there was significant opposition. And you were able to navigate that and still have the people that fought you on it say hello to you when you walk down Montague Street or something like that. How do you bring that type of leadership to really an agency that I think, you know, while the average New Yorker may not know about it, that it affects the average New Yorker every day in our life? Give us a sense of how you kind of bring what you've learned in the past to this job.
Well, I mean, good question, Carlo. And I do think that experience has a lot to say about why it was the mayor chose me, because I got to know him when he was the young council member next door, and we worked together on a lot of these Brooklyn Bridge Park fights. And yes, it's astonishing how many times we were sued, vilified, personally attacked by longtime friends and neighbors. You would have thought we were building a nuclear waste dump here rather than a world-class park. So in terms of navigating those issues, and this isn't unlike what I did as a lawyer, what all the recovering lawyers on the call did as lawyers. You analyze the issues on the merits, you look at the data, you look at the facts, you try and distinguish between the not so relevant noise, some of which gets people very upset because it's sort of emotional, right? It's important to them personally, but it doesn't really or shouldn't really affect the decision. And you cut through and you try and figure out what the right thing is to do and what makes sense on the merits. And then you try and sell it to the various people involved as being a good outcome, even if it's not what they might have done if they were in charge alone, which none of us ever are. As commissioner, I'm obviously not. That approach, and then dealing with people respectfully. I mean, this sounds sort of obvious, but obviously has fallen out of favor in Washington, at least until recently. The idea of being able to disagree without being disagreeable, to listen respectfully to differing points of views. I mean, that's the thing, and we've managed doing that. We've managed to get some pretty cool stuff done. I mean, start with the park itself. That required a partnership between the state of New York and the city of New York, because each controlled some of the real estate. It required Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani, who didn't agree on much of anything, to reach agreement on how to do that. And then it turned out it wasn't Giuliani. Things got delayed by 9/11. It ended up being Bloomberg. I mean, people would have thought there's no way you'll get the city and state to agree on that. But we did, because we had a plan that made sense. It worked well for both of them, even for their differing reasons. And that's what I've tried to do in civic engagements for the last 22 years as a part-time avocation. This is the first time that it's my full-time job, and I'm hoping those same skill sets and that same approach to problem solving and to dealing with people can help us make some real progress this year. That's the aim.
Well, that's clearly a great aim. Mike and Mike, any other questions on your end before we wrap it up?
I guess one last question for me, Commissioner, is just technology, and it's a very broad topic. But when you think about fully committed BRT and autonomous vehicles and so many elements that go into smart cities, and I know the DOT has addressed a lot, but what are your thoughts on what you might do in the next 10 months in that regard?
We are doing our best. One of the happy discoveries when I got to the agency and got to know some of the less visible parts of the organization is we've got some really smart, talented people at the agency working on all this stuff. And I mean, look, we're doing, when you look at how streets are being reimagined to be more safely shared by pedestrians, by bicycles, by e-bikes, by cars, by buses, etc. There's a lot of really high-tech stuff that's built into that in terms of signal timing, in terms of audible signals so that the disabled, visually disabled are not at risk. I mean, there's some really serious thought. I mean, some of it is sort of physical architecture, but some of it is advanced technology in terms of how to do that stuff. Look, we're also, I mean, one of the other issues that I'm very interested in, and that we have people at the agency working on, is freight and goods. How do they move around the city, right? I mean, we've seen with the rise in e-commerce, a dramatic increase in demand for freight within the city, not stuff passing through to avoid tolls, but the stuff that's either coming from or heading to the city. And then in the pandemic, when everybody gets everything delivered at home, including things like takeout food, groceries, your prescriptions, most of which you used to go out for, the demand's become even greater, and the competition at the curb has become greater. So again, we've got all sorts of modern, higher tech approaches that we're trying to explore for helping make that rational and reduce dependence, just as we're reducing dependence on the automobile. It would be nice if, at least within the city limits, we were reducing dependence on oversized trucks, right? I mean, people usually don't like them on their residential streets. I understand that we need to get goods to and from the city. I'm not discounting that, but reimagining how we do that is obviously an important part of the mission. So all of that's underway. And as I said, with respect to my car, I mean, I purposely chose one that would have all of the bells and whistles and warning things to make me a better, safer driver when I take the car out, as well as doing it it's an electric vehicle. So I'm making my contribution, I hope, in terms of carbon footprint. All of that is something that we want to encourage too. So, technology is going to play a big role in it. And, my professional career was representing technology companies. So I'm all in for that stuff.
Great. Well, I know, look, you've got 10 months ahead of you. I think that you're going to surprise a lot of people in how much you will accomplish in 10 months. But I also think you will leave a blueprint for the next administration on what are some priority things that they can get started quickly. And I think that's a very critical thing to do, particularly coming out of an economic, a racial, and a healthcare pandemic that we've been through in the last year and a half.
That's the hope, Carlo. As my late grandmother used to say, from your lips to God's ears.
Yes.
And yes, I mean, there are things we plan to get done in these 10 months. And as to the rest, what we want to do is put it in a position so that we have an agenda, we have a plan, well thought out, that hopefully whoever the next mayor is will embrace and follow through on. That's exactly the goal. Right. So, and we look forward to the assistance and the guidance and the input from you and from all of your colleagues as we do that.
Sounds great. Michael, any last comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, actually, no further questions from me. I just wish you well, and I hope you get to really drive your agenda and have a very successful year.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, same here. Good luck, Commissioner. We'll be happy to help you in any way we can.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
And,
thanks much.
We've got some incredible members and firms that really are doing the work that DOT is putting out there. So we are here to help in any way we can. A couple of housekeeping items before we go. Well, I've got a captive audience. First of all, I want to thank our former board chair, Milo Reverso, for being with us. Milo, it's good to quote you. It's always a pleasure. Yesterday, we had a very successful espresso with Carlo, with Maya Wiley, who is one of the candidates running for mayor. And next Tuesday, we will be hosting Andrew Yang, who is also one of the candidates running for mayor. So please sign up. And March 18th at 10 a.m., we are hosting a similar format to this with the new president of Amtrak, Stephen Gardner, who will be talking about Gateway and some other great projects. And later that day, we'll be releasing, I think, one of our first ever reports on this, which is called Building Congress Across America, which will really show how the New York Building Congress is having an effect really in almost every state across the USA with creation of jobs and infrastructure projects, et cetera. So look forward to seeing you at all of that. Hank Gutman, congratulations again. We are thrilled to have you in the seat you're in, and we look forward to more of this together. And thank you to all of you, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, Carlo.
Thank you.
Thank you.